welcome to another episode of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. I'm Dr. Bryan McKinley, and today we have a different sort of episode and a definitely different location than my office or my home office. This week's episode is going to be a very special one, a special request, since I've found over the years that I have students that tend to ask me a lot of random questions, and one of the random questions that keeps coming up is, hey, Dr. M, I want to get this tattoo or this piercing in this place and whatever of this or that. Should I do it? Will my DI director get mad? Will I have to cover this when I go to work in the future? I get a lot of questions along the lines of that. And it just so happens that I have an in-home expert of my own, Mr. Bryan McKinley, my husband.
Hello.
And tattoo artist for almost 10 years.
Make me sound old.
I'm still older. Okay, cut. All right, well, welcome. First podcast. Don't get nervous, but
I'm good.
give our viewers at home, because I've never mentioned you on the podcast before, because it's never really come up in conversation. So give us an introduction to you, your experience in the tattoo/body art industry, and comment on how familiar you are with our world of dietetics and kind of the theme of what my podcasts usually are.
Well, as she said, my name's Bryan McKinley. I am her husband. I've been tattooing almost 10 years, roughly 9.5 or so. Yeah, I mean, as far as like how familiar I am with your stuff, it's basically just from what you've told me about students asking questions. On your end, there are a lot of the same questions that I get asked. So we see it every day, young college kids come in, 18 to roughly maybe like 20 years old, wanting to get the first tattoo. And then the main question is, or the main concern is that they want it to be hidden or able to be covered up, not necessarily hidden. Most of the time, from what I've gathered, it's more of the female clientele who's worried about it, because more of them are not sure if they want to stick with the dietetic route or nutrition route. Most of them kind of are more like nursing students and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, that's mainly the concern, roughly. Most guys usually don't care, but every now and then I'll get a guy ask. But mostly it's the female clientele that wants you to be able to hide it, or who are more concerned.
Gotcha. So for our viewers who maybe are wondering, the process to become a dietitian, yes, is very similar in scope to the life of being an apprentice when you are becoming a tattoo artist.
Yes.
How is it similar?
From what I've been told, and from what you've told me, as far as how your interns work and everything, the general consensus is that you don't get paid. That's pretty much it.
Asterisk, unless you're at a paid one. But
yeah,
there's not many.
It's very rare that you will find a paid internship. It is zero chance that you'll have a paid apprenticeship for tattooing. Normally the way it works, if you're wanting to be an apprentice, you have to actually pay somebody their apprentice fee or whatever they want to charge you. It's different per tattooer who wants to train. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but basically you're paying for the education. Just like an internship, or just like school or anything like that. But it's not a formal, you don't get like a written documentation or anything like that. You show up, you do what they tell you. Sometimes and it's different per tattooer as well, as far as how they train. Some people want to be jerks about it and make you do stuff that you wouldn't normally do, like clean the floor with a toothbrush or some stupid stuff like that. Nowadays it's a little more tame. My apprenticeship was super tame. It was just basically show up, watch people tattoo all day, and that's it. Draw. And so from what I hear from I've never had an internship, so I can't really relate personally, but from what I hear from the people that I do tattoo that have internships, normally always complain about it because it's hard work, you don't get paid, and then you're basically just striving for that experience. That's mainly what you're going for. So it's not necessarily, like I said, we don't get a written, there's a stamp of approval, certificate of a good job that here.
There's no graduation.
There's no graduation. It's basically you do your internship or your apprenticeship until you are good to go, until the person in charge feels like you're ready to step out on your own or you've served your time, so to speak.
Definitely served your time. So for the viewers, I was a dietetic intern at the same exact time as Bryan was going through his apprenticeship. So we were working all day for free and then leaving our apprenticeship or the hospital and going to work for the rest of the day. And we did not see each other at all.
Nope.
It ended up ruining our relationship for a short period of time because we didn't see each other. But then once you got to a place where you were able to be tattooing full time and you technically weren't an apprentice anymore, and then I was out of my internship, life resumed to normal as we could kind of eliminate that working for free part. So for those that are stressed out about that, maybe we can do another episode about how to handle all of that. But Bryan gets it. He's been around for a while. He definitely understands our industry and what this podcast is about. So to jump into what we're going to talk about today, I want to give a big shout out to LSU dietetic student Alexis Therio. She compiled some great research for us, information about the topics we're going to talk about today. And as she was researching, she's found that this topic of body art, tattoos, piercings, and the workplace, it comes up in the news every so often in different ways. So there's definitely, when you go out and try to find this information, it comes in waves. And some of the statistics are a little bit old. It doesn't seem lately that anyone's doing any kind of statistics on things related to this right now. But over the last decade, it's come up in the media's attention and social media attention in different ways. So lately, we've seen a lot of this tattoos in the workplace aspect come up with all of the inclusive and diversity things that are going on across the nation. So employers are trying to become more inclusive, more diverse in who they have in their workplace. But then the question is still what's acceptable for view versus not. And it can become quite controversial when it needs to be or when it wants to be. But we have some statistics that maybe the viewers who are not so familiar with the world of tattoos and body art. So it says here 42% of adults in the US are tattooed. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, to an extent. I would say, depending on when this study was actually done, it could potentially be more than this. Because I'm tattooing people every single day. So I would think it'd be a little bit higher, maybe more closer to the 50-50 thing, because of TV and the popularity of tattoos becoming more normalized, you could say. Sure. So I would say on the younger crowd, definitely closer to 50-50. Older crowd, probably more than 42%.
Yeah, Alexis found 47% of millennials have tattoos in comparison to 36% of Gen Xers and 13% of baby boomers. And so we don't really have stats on the Gen Zers yet, but I bet that is a lot higher because that's more your key demographic, seeing as though we are in a town close to a university.
Yes and no. I think we're kind of getting to that point to where, tattoos are normalized and they're getting normalized by the day. But we're kind of running into where that whole history repeats itself kind of thing. So where your Gen Zers or whatever they're called now. I think some of them might start becoming in that mindset of where it's cooler not to have a tattoo because everybody has a tattoo.
That's true.
I think we might be getting to that point just from what I've seen. Also with what has happened with the pandemic, we haven't been tattooing a lot of those people because they want it right now. And so with the way we operate and with the way that most tattoo shops operate, we operate on a first come, first served basis. And then if we get to the point to where we're booked out so far in advance that we can't do walk-ins and stuff like that, the younger crowd wants it right here and right now. So they want, your little small tattoos that take 5-10 minutes. Well, we can't get to that right now. So most of those people aren't getting tattooed. And it's not just us. It's pretty much everybody I've talked to in the tattoo industry says that, they're booked out until August right now. So it's like you're not going to get your, come in, walk in, get it right there and then. Also, the younger crowd and everything like that, they don't want to pay our minimum. So our minimum is $100. That's basically to cover setup. That's barely paying us for the time it does, because now with the pandemic, supplies have just skyrocketed. So we had to raise our prices a little bit. So now, like I said, those younger people aren't wanting to pay $100 for a little small tattoo, So that could affect the stats in the future as well. So
I could see that, because our Gen Zers are the children of Gen Xers, and if your mom or dad has a tattoo, you don't want to quite be like your mom or dad yet.
Yet they're wearing mom jeans.
True. They took the jeans, not the artwork. All right. And then we also have here 2015 Harris Poll. 1 in 3 Americans, or 29%, have a tattoo, with most having more than one. So we haven't really seen any recent stats regarding this particular topic. Maybe that stuff will come out a little bit in the future. But case in point, people are tattooed. They're going to continue to get tattooed. So the number is going to continue to rise. So how are those who are tattooed navigating covering or not covering their artwork in the workplace? And then what does that look like in the healthcare field, since the viewers of this podcast are most likely to be going into dietetics or into the healthcare field in one way or another? And then we also are going to give today some advice for those who are planning to enter dietetic internships and supervised practice programs, who maybe are already tattooed or are planning to become tattooed in the near future. So jumping into what you've done throughout the last 10 years, what types of professionals have you tattooed over the years?
Oh, I've tattooed everybody. I usually tell, when people ask me that question, I tell them I've tattooed doctors, lawyers, preachers, teachers, everybody. Like, it's like we said earlier, everybody gets a tattoo. Our doctor back home was covered in tattoos. He had a full body suit.
That is true.
But you could not see anything when he wore a lab coat. Mm-hmm. Like, that was it. Like, it was neckline to his feet. Like, literally every inch of his body except for his hands and face. So yeah, it's literally anybody. Like, there's no set group of people anymore like it was back in the day, to where it was like criminals only got tattoos, jailhouse and people like that. It's like, because I get it all the time, is that I don't even look like a tattoo artist. Like, I get that comment all the time. They're like, "You do tattoos?" Like, yeah, I do. But to answer your question, everybody. I've tattooed everybody. Depending on where, we've both been located in a college town since I started tattooing. So generally speaking, I've always tried to work at a higher end shop, to where I'm not working in a street shop, not, working 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We aim for a higher clientele just because we're getting older and we don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. And most of us have a family, so it's like we don't want to be here until 2 or 3 in the morning, because we did that when we were younger in our apprenticeships and stuff. And so, when you get 10 years in, you don't want to do that kind of stuff anymore. But yeah, there's no set. Usually it's like most of my clientele nowadays is law enforcement, university employees, military every now and then. Everybody gets tattoos. So yeah, you'd be hard pressed not to find somebody with a tattoo now.
Yeah. So we've kind of had this discussion amongst ourselves and looking at what's available on the internet. And so I don't think it's a shock to anybody that employers have traditionally taken this stance that visible body art is unprofessional, and they may have a company policy that revolves around that. And the policy might include that it must be covered, and then if you're caught with it not covered, there might be some disciplinary action in that. But then we've seen over the years, more and more companies have eased up on these types of policies for various reasons. So as time goes on, we're seeing younger individuals moving up into upper management positions who maybe are a little bit more understanding or are tattooed themselves and don't want the policy to apply to themselves. And we're also seeing a lot of research that was pulled up that your best talent that's available to your company might be heavily tattooed, and you would be missing out on some of the best talent for your industry if you were to uphold that type of policy. And then depending on what kind of business you have, your clientele might straight up just not care. And it's not really going to make a difference whether whoever's working with the clientele is tattooed or pierced or whatever or not. And so one of the big things we saw when we were looking at some research in preparation for this episode was that really respecting employees' freedom of expression tends to come up a lot more with this decade, this generation of individuals. And obviously, companies are going to be trying to avoid potential lawsuits. So if someone feels that they were discriminated against in any way throughout the hiring process and maybe not getting an offer, or they were hired on with the misunderstanding of a policy, they weren't told about a policy and maybe unlawfully terminated later, that could lead to legal issues and negative press that isn't worth it to a particular employer. And so they maybe just kind of have, instead of an official policy, it's kind of maybe that unspoken thing of, maybe don't make it so obvious, or when you're around clients, cover it up, but if you're just in your office working, it's not a big deal. So every employer out there is going to have something that's a little bit different. So have you seen an increase or a decrease in folks asking about placement as far as making sure they can cover it up, or are they just not caring?
I wouldn't say there's an increase or a decrease over my time tattooing. I think it's been kind of consistent from when I started to now, as far as like people caring about, location and stuff like that based on their job and whatnot like that. I think it's pretty consistent. I don't think there's more of if anything, I would say it's less now, just because people are more comfortable with tattoos and everything. But generally speaking, across the board, it's been about the same. My main thing about that is, look at your policies. If you're going to go into a job that you really care about, look at your policies. Like, see what their stand on the tattoo issue is. Talk to the people in charge. Research everything, and that's not just tattoos. That means everything. So like, you may have to wear a certain type of clothes. And if you do that, then you got to follow every single part of the policy.
All right, Bryan, so take us through, you've told me about this before, take us through the conversation that you have when clients come into the shop and they request a very visible tattoo that seems very off-brand for that particular individual. Maybe it's their very first tattoo. Go through that conversation that you have with them to really figure out what's going to be best for them.
Do you want to pick an age range, or?
Let's start with the younger.
Younger? Okay. Younger people, I usually tell them not to get a highly visible tattoo just in general. Like, I'm not going to do your first tattoo on your hands, neck, or face at all. Like, no questions asked. Don't even, if you bring it up, I'm going to shut you down real quick. Number one is because you're young. You don't really know what you're doing. So I was the same way in college too. It's like, when you're in college, you change your mind 100 times about what you want to do for your major. And you see it all the time too when you're advising and everything. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you're not 100% on what you're going to do. There's very few younger people that happens to, but that doesn't really apply for what we're talking about. But just generally speaking, when they come in and they're like, hey, I want to get a tattoo, and if somebody was like, I want it on my hand, because that's really popular right now. It's like, highly visible tattoos are really popular right now, and I have to shut a lot of younger people down because of it. because number one, you don't know how to take care of a tattoo. And that's just on my end, is because you've never had a tattoo before. Those are high traffic areas that don't really heal properly unless you just baby them. But again, when it comes to like jobs and stuff, I tell them, you don't know what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So don't get anything that's going to compromise that. I mean, we have a term in the industry, they're called job stoppers. So, and that's been a term for years, and we always, make fun of that. They just call it job stoppers because it's just the way it is. Because people look at you, and if you have like your neck or your face or your hand tattooed, they're like, and you want to go work in a corporate job, 100% chance you're not going to get hired or even considered, no matter how good you are at the job or anything. But so I tell them, get it in a place that you can cover it up for now, kind of work your way up. And that's just old school mentality as well, to where you kind of got to like earn a visible tattoo in a way, to where me personally, I want tattooed neck, hands, or face unless you're heavily covered. But anyway, going back to the job thing, get it to where you can cover it up, under a shirt, long sleeve shirt, legs, torso, anywhere. You can get your tattoo anywhere. You got plenty of time to get tattooed on the rest of your body, Like you're 18, you got plenty of time.
So would you say that a lot of other artists take the time to go through that thought process and that conversation? Okay.
No.
So that's maybe something to be aware of if you have an artist that is...
You will only really find that mentality at a higher end shop. So if you go into like a street shop or just, a random late night shop, so to speak, they don't care. They're just there to take your money. They don't care if you most of the time they're dealing with drunk clientele anyway. So it's like, you're only going to find that mentality at higher end shops.
All right, moving on to our second topic we're going to talk about today, moving into tattoos among healthcare professionals. So Bryan, you've tattooed a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses, even some dietitians here in Baton Rouge, and that's sometimes how I meet them for the first time, is that they meet you and then they stalk me on social media and they're like, hey, I met your husband, you're a dietitian, that's awesome.
Yes.
That has happened over the years.
Yes.
So it's no secret that the healthcare industry, they're fans of body art, and it's probably no secret that many of you watching this are fans of it as well, and that's why you found this particular episode. So Alexis found us some really great research on body art in the healthcare industry. A bunch of different studies that were done pretty recently. So 2018 study found that patients did not perceive a difference in physician reliability, competence, professionalism, caring, approachability, trustworthiness, things like that, when they saw exposed body art. So maybe the fact that they're in a healthcare setting and there's more of a more important thing going on with their health, that they're not going to be so much concerned with what the doctor looks like. A separate study had several hospital workers say that visible ink can actually hurt your professional growth and limit your chances of moving into management positions. And as somebody who has worked in hospitals in the past, I can kind of see that. There is a difference when you get into a hospital between your frontline workers on the floor and those that are in administration. And hospital administration tends to still be kind of old school in its mentality. If you think about hospital administration, those are the people that are going on television speaking for the hospital system. So I'm sure if you think back to every press conference you saw in 2020 about COVID-19, the person representing the hospital or the CDC or anybody did not have visible tattoos. Looked like your typical corporate America
Or they had
adult, or they had long sleeves or something like that. So I can see how management would be held to a higher standard than your frontline workers with regard to that. And so the same study found that two major reasons why doctors, nurses, and people from management may refrain from excessive or visible tattoos are the belief that the body ink is not professional in general, or this negative stigma of being associated with criminal activity. So you kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, and so we'll kind of pick up on that. Personally, I know that I think when people meet me and they learn what I do, and they think that because I'm a professor that I have like this high standard of how I live my life. I don't know. I don't know if it's from years of
doctor though.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you got that title. It's that title.
I think it's from when I meet people, they think about their professors when they were in school. They were probably a little bit older, so they assume that I am maybe a little bit more hoity-toity with my life. I don't know. Or they
it's the same it's a stereotype.
Yeah,
it's how like I don't look like a tattoo artist. You don't look like a professor.
I don't.
You know, kind of thing.
Except our glasses.
Exactly.
But I think people might assume that I'm married to another academic or another healthcare professional, another doctor, another researcher. Would you see that a lot in academia? I'm one of the few that actually is tried to avoid that at all costs, because you don't want to be in the same house with the person that does exactly what you do every day.
Yes.
And so I've always strived to make sure that never happens. So when I tell individuals what my husband does, there is this pause and this reaction of like, you can almost see their eyes glaze over, and they are envisioning what he looks like. One example was a couple of years ago, we were in Biloxi. We like to gamble, but we play very different things. So we actually don't hang out together when we're gambling, because you're at the roulette table. I
like the tables.
I'm at a machine somewhere. And so I remember I just met this random couple at the bar. We were just chit-chatting about whatever. And they were, I think they were wondering why I was by myself, that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, my husband's playing roulette. And as individuals do, their automatic reaction is to ask people what they do for a living. So they were like, oh, what's your husband do? And I was like, oh, he's a tattoo artist. And the man, for a split second, looked over my shoulder. You can see it look over my shoulder at the roulette table with this look on his face, like he was looking for
a particular kind of person.
Yes.
Or like a particular look.
Yeah. And so he didn't see that, looks back at me and he goes, so is he like covered? And he did this. I get this a lot. I think people assume that tattoo artists automatically have neck tattoos. You've been watching too many Ink Master episodes if that's your automatic reaction, because you have to remember that.
Too much TV.
Yeah, TV casts for looks, and they are looking for that look for television shows like that. But most tattoo artists,
because most of the tattoo artists that I know personally look like me.
Yeah, they're not covered.
They're not covered
because they're too busy working.
Yeah, number one, we're too busy working. Number two, most of us don't even really like to get tattooed because it hurts. Like it just hurts, and the older you get, the more it hurts. But yeah, the number one thing is we're just too busy.
So I do get that a lot. People assume that Bryan went to prison, that he rides a motorcycle, which is like
that's the number one thing.
That's the cheesy one because it just makes me laugh. But because I think
I've never even been on a motorcycle.
I think of your father.
Yeah,
he rides a motorcycle, and then that makes me laugh even more.
Yeah,
but people just have this automatic reaction, and then there's that follow-up question of, well, how did that happen? How did someone from academia meet somebody who's a tattoo artist? And it's like, I was a grad student and he was a bartender. We met each other when we knew what we wanted to do with our lives, but we were inching closer to that. Mm-hmm. And then in our relationship, this is what it's come to. And it's a pretty cool combination because you don't see that very often. But I experienced what I believe to be discrimination on one of my interviews when I was about to finish my PhD. I was interviewing at several schools for positions in dietetics, and I was at a school up north. I'm not going to say the name of it. And when you're in an interview setting, for those that are familiar with this podcast or familiar with this process of transitioning into the workplace, there are things that you can't ask in an interview, and one of them is usually what your spouse does. They're not even actually allowed to ask if you're married or not.
It's technically like illegal, isn't it?
Yeah, so what happens in academic positions is they take you out to dinner, they take you out to lunch, they drive you around town, and they engage in casual conversation with you. And that's how they pull stuff out about you. And it had originally come up in conversation. This particular place we were at had a very big art scene. So galleries, music venues, like off-Broadway, that sort of thing. And
Very artsy community.
yeah, and I just made the one-off comment of, oh, my husband will love that, not thinking anything of it. And the person I was in the car with was like, oh, is your husband an artist? And I said, yes. And I didn't think they would follow up with a question. And then the next question was, what's their medium? Which when someone asked that, it's kind of funny because like
it's an artsy community, so it's like that's kind of
how they talk.
Yeah, that's how they talk. So it's like when you have people that are sculptors and painters and poets and stuff like that. Yeah, they're gonna, if they're acclimated to that lifestyle, they're gonna ask what kind of medium. So yeah.
I don't even know what I said to that question. I just think I said like
I
illustration. I know.
No, you didn't say skin.
I think I said like illustration. Or digital, what is it called? Graphic design. I said something. I didn't lie. I just kind of was like, oh, illustration.
Yeah, I think you said
technically you're an illustrator if you think about it. And then you go out to dinner that night. That person came to dinner, brought it up again, and was like, Erin's husband's an artist. And then the probe questions came over dinner. And then I finally admitted what it was. And the department head thought it was like the most amazing thing ever. And I was like, well, that's a good sign when they don't see a problem with it. He actually was fascinated by it. But then the next day when we were in the official interview, he brought it up again after he was like, yeah, I was thinking about what you were talking about last night with your husband and da-da-da. And somebody who wasn't at that dinner, who I said, I don't think they liked me to begin with. We just weren't vibing throughout the whole interview. When the department head said, oh, her husband is a tattoo artist, this person's face, it was like that face where you can see someone's dying inside. They were just like she didn't want to be at the table anymore. Like you could tell she had a very negative stigma attached to that. And therefore, because I was married to somebody who was an artist.
Who she didn't even know.
There was automatically, that said something about me. And so I could just, and it was that person's attitude towards me changed even more. And it was, you could just tell she didn't want to sit at the table. She didn't want to talk to me. Like the ride to the airport was awkward. It was, she could not get me out of there fast enough. And it was more like, have a nice life. Like, you're definitely not getting this job. And I'm fine with this.
Yeah, most of the time you don't want to work at a place like that anyway.
Like, I got home and was like, that was really weird. I didn't like that. Was I bummed I didn't get the job? Yeah, only because I really needed a job at the time. But
yeah, we were kind of done.
I'm very thankful I didn't go to that particular university. So it's both ways. You might encounter it because of what you have on you, what you tell people, what you do for a living. They make assumptions about that. But then they also make assumptions about me as well, and maybe my life choices or whatever you want to call it. I've just been tricking everybody this so far.
Yeah, right?
All right, so bringing it back to what this podcast is usually about, as far as the episodes with regard to dietetic internships, supervised practice programs, graduate schools, whatnot. Bryan's already brought this up. You really need to do your research. You really need to investigate the internships you're thinking about applying to. Look at the different hospitals and facilities that you might be sent to if you are an intern with that particular program. You want to look at the policies within those different places, because just because it's a rule with the internship or not a rule with an internship doesn't mean that it's not a rule with one of the facilities you might be placed at. And a lot of times folks tend to get themselves into trouble when they apply to a program where the rules seem pretty lax, and then they actually get into the program and it's discovered that the hospital has a major issue with a particular intern because of something in their background, something going on with them, and maybe something related to body art. And so if you can get that information up front before you even apply to a program, the better. You want to be making sure that you're going after programs that you're not going to be encountering any issues with, depending on what you want to do with your body art. If you refuse to cover it, you're going to need to find a program that has those facilities that are not going to care. That's a discussion you have with the director before you apply, where you tell them what you have. Or if you meet them, you show them and ask them, is this going to be a problem? And if they're telling you yes, maybe you need to maybe change your thought process about that. I haven't had a student that's ever gotten upset when I pretty much told them, you're going to need to cover that in the future. I think the ones that maybe were the most heavily tattooed didn't end up going into dietetics for other reasons. Just like employers and companies that we talked about earlier, dietetic internships and supervised practice programs, graduate schools, they are very much concerned with their image. And that's not to throw shade at any program out there. We love our programs, but it's true. You have to really, they are thinking about themselves more than they are thinking about you. And so it's increasingly difficult for programs to be securing these preceptor contracts. I had firsthand experience with this at my former institution, working with the internship and seeing how very minor problems can make big problems when a preceptor site wants to cancel its contract because maybe a program was able to send 5 or 10 interns there throughout the year, and now they have to scramble to find replacement locations. And so these contracts that your internship sites are setting up are very, very important to the livelihood of a program, to the sustainability and success of an internship program. And so a lot of times the preceptors in the hospitals and different facilities, they are basing maybe their decision to continue to work with a particular university or a program, they base that on the interns that are coming in the door and the impression that those interns are making on them. If a certain facility has a major issue with how the interns look with regard to body art, piercings, hair color, that sort of thing, that's what's really going to push a dietetic internship in the direction of having a written policy about how you are to present yourself when you are going into your rotations and working with your preceptors. And so a lot of programs err on the side of caution with how it comes to how interns look. A lot of times interns can get away with having maybe little wrist tattoos, kind of like how I have, or something very, very tiny that maybe they can cover up with makeup. The makeup they make to cover up tattoos these days is pretty good. It might just be a pain to have to do it every day, but it might be something that you have to do if one of your sites really doesn't want you to be showing that.
It's just that's actually come up a lot lately as far as like policies and everything like that, because I've always had this kind of like ongoing theory that, and it happens a lot with hospitals. Not necessarily like internships, but like hiring nurses and dietetic programs and stuff like that. It happens a lot with the military, law enforcement as well. For years, I've had this kind of like ongoing theory that when a policy changes that is more lax on tattoos, they're hurting because they need people. They need to hire people. And when they get enough people, they change it back. And same thing with law enforcement. So yeah, that actually has come up a lot lately. About policies flipping back and forth. So just kind of like, if you just want to kind of bite the bullet for now and just be like, hey, I'm going to follow policy strictly, chances are it's going to change. Like there'll be a time of the year where it'll change for maybe 3 to 6 months. Like I said, I get a huge influx because when it changed back home at the hospital, I had 10, 15 nurses come out of the woodworks. They were like, hey, they just changed our policy after like 5 years. So we can get visible tattoos now. So they got them in. They were like, say it's the same thing. We want to get them in before they change the policy back.
Because they can't be fired later because
you're kind of grandfathered in. Because if you have the tattoo while the policy, it's kind of a loophole thing. So if you get it while the policy is lax, then when they change it back, they can't do anything. So,
which is interesting that they would flip back and forth.
But
anyway,
yeah, and like I said, it's just kind of like a hiring freeze kind of thing.
And that could be similar with an internship. I have seen internships make exceptions to their rules when they want particular students in their program or when they know they need to fill their class. They are willing to be a little lax, but you don't want to rely on that. And so you might encounter an internship that has a pretty lengthy dress code. When I was an intern, our dress code was 2 or 3 pages long, and it included no visible tattoos. We couldn't have any facial piercings. We could only have 1 stud earring in each ear. No piercings or anything during food service rotations. If we wanted to wear nail polish, it had to be clear, except during food service when you couldn't have any, but the nail polish thing we broke all the time. because the hospitals themselves didn't care. And when we were not at the university very much during our internship, so they couldn't really pop in and check on what nail polish color we had.
I think with like when it comes to the internships, they just want to see, it's kind of like a preliminary kind of like, hey, can you follow, if you can follow these rules, then, you know, in the future, we can kind of be more lax. So it's like, are you willing to do what we're asking you up front to get this job? And then we'll talk about, you know, because I've heard interns say too, or military intern, pretty much all my clients, they're like, when it does get lax, like you say, they're like, okay, we'll take you with the tattoos that you have, but don't get any more right now. Just don't add to it.
I've heard that before.
And then we'll talk after the internship's over, you know. So it's kind of like, and then too, if you can prove that you can do your job and do it very well, they're going to be way more lax on the tattoos anyway, because it's like, oh, you can do your job. We don't care what you look like. You know?
Yeah.
And especially if you're exceptional at your job. Mm-hmm. So bite the bullet, do the internship, do what they tell you. Mm-hmm. Then later on in life, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, because I remember when I was an intern, seeing that dress code up front, I was like, wow, that's intense. We have to follow a lot of rules. It felt like it was more to protect the university's image, but it was also to protect our own image, because most internship directors are going to tell you day one at orientation, this is one, however long your internship, 9 months, 18-month long job interview. Every day you go into your rotation is another opportunity to show those individuals how good you are at that particular, whatever it is, whatever rotation it turns out to be that you're working on. Most interns that I know end up getting hired at one of their preceptor sites, at one of the hospitals or facilities, because they were able to work alongside the hiring manager or the preceptor for an extended period of time. And that's going to tell them way more about you as an employee than just through a job interview. And
plus,
so
you got to think, it's like you're not only representing that company that you want to work for, you're representing the people that sent you there.
Exactly.
Like if you sent somebody, you're like, hey, I got this person,
mm-hmm.
here's the internship, you're representing your mentor basically.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of live up to an image and a perception, because if that company gets an intern from, we'll use you as an example, so if a company gets you an intern from you and that intern turns out to be bad or doesn't do their job or doesn't work or anything, that's going to reflect on you.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not going to want to hire, they're going to be like, oh, Erin from LSU, yeah, we're not going to accept anybody from her. Mm-hmm. So that's going to, you got to take into that account too, like all the people you're representing in your circle and the program you're in. So you're, as an intern, you're representing the LSU in academia as well, not just yourself.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of take that into account as well.
Or whatever university.
Or yeah,
it's not just for LSU. But that is a good point. You did bring up a good point that would relate to those who are thinking about going into distance internship programs, where you're not going to be in the same place as the physical program. So you're going to be using your network in order to find different preceptors. So I have a lot of students that come back to me and ask, oh, I need a clinical site. I'm coming home for Christmas. I can sneak in 2 weeks somewhere. Can you hook me up with somebody? I take that person into consideration. And I don't always recommend certain former students to certain RDs. I also take personality into consideration too. That's a whole other thing. But you did bring up a good point. You represent not just your program, you represent everybody, your whole network. And so kind of flipping it in this direction of when I do get those questions from my students about, should I get this tattoo here, should I get there, is it going to affect my future? I take a very old school stance on it. And I think that might surprise people, because there are some of my students that do know what my husband does. But I also think they're surprised because I have visible tattoos, but there's a difference between where I am and where my students are. It took me a long time to get comfortable with having anything visible. And I'm at a point in my career where I honestly don't care if somebody judges me. I have coworkers, not in my department, but in other colleges on campus that are very heavily and visibly tattooed, and it's not a big deal.
And I've tattooed most of them.
Yes. So my little wrist tattoos are not going to be a big deal.
Plus, also, you waited, 3 years almost before we tattooed you at this job?
I think
So you didn't have really
I
any.
got the first one after year 1, the second one after year 2. I haven't got one for year 3 yet because I'm just not in the mood for it right now.
Point in case is that she waited a while into her job to make sure.
Yeah, I didn't do it like 2 months in.
Yeah, you
I'm at LSU. I'm
like,
set. Let's
like,
get
yeah, exactly.
Let's get the sleeve done. No.
So yeah, you want to make sure that you're in a position to where you can do that.
But I take the old school stance. So when you go to maybe your DPD directors or different mentors that you have, they might also have an old school stance on it. And it's not an old school stance of, no, don't do it, tattoos are bad, I'm not going to go into any of that. I'm telling my students the advice that I give. It's from the standpoint of you just have to err on the side of caution because you just don't know how others think about body art, piercings, tattoos. We haven't gone into the piercings thing, but it is very similar. Like having a facial piercing could be as off-putting to somebody as a visible tattoo.
Oh yeah, and I would say nowadays piercings are more offsetting anyway.
Yeah.
That's why you don't see a lot of people running around with facial piercings and stuff like that.
And you would have to take them out as an intern. That's why I haven't really brought that up.
Yeah.
Like hospitals will not allow you to have facial piercings for, what's the word I'm looking for? I just thought of COVID-19. What's the word? What's the buzzword? It's unsanitary.
Unsanitary, yeah. I thought that's what
I could not think of that word.
I thought that's where you were going, but I was like, maybe.
Unsanitary. So.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't clean their piercings.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't bring them up that much this episode because.
We don't do piercings, so.
So he's not really an expert.
So yeah, I'm not an expert on piercings at all.
So you have to remember, and Bryan's mentioned this a couple of times already, you just kind of have to play by the rules, do your research. Your internship, maybe at this point when you're about to embark onto one, or embark on one, apply to one, it does seem like this huge part of your life. Hindsight, it's going to be a very small part of this journey to become a dietitian. And sometimes you just have to play by the rules. I have a former student of mine that calls it kissing the ring. You just have to kiss the ring for as long as you're in the program, do whatever it is you're told to do, cover up, wear something a certain way, not wear certain things, wear your hair a certain way. Just do what you're told, because once it's all over, you can move on, get the job that you've always wanted, and work in a place that's going to make you feel comfortable with however you want to express yourself. So I know some might not like that, or like that I just said that, to where it's like, no, I want to express myself. You have to play by the rules if you want to be in this profession.
Fake it till you make it.
That's pretty much what you have to do. And not every program's the same, not every internship program's the same, but at this point in my career, with how many internship directors I have met just over the last year in doing this podcast, everyone kind of has that, oh, I have a tattoo myself. I totally support it, but my facilities might not. They're thinking about those hospital administrators in the suits that might not think it's so cute that someone has a particular visible tattoo. So it's not, at the end of this episode, we're not saying you shouldn't be doing these things. It's just that you have to go into these situations of applying to internships and supervised practice programs with an open mind that you might be asked to alter the way that you present yourself. As far as showing tattoos, having certain hair color. I remember at my internship, you could not have any alternative hair color other than red, blonde, brown, or black. And students would purposely dye their hair pink and blue right before application period, knowing they could get rid of it. And we actually had students that had to dye their hair black because the pink would not come out of their blonde. That's how strict it was. You could not walk into a facility with pink hair in October for breast cancer awareness. Even though that's like a thing that people do, it was not looked highly upon as an intern. It was like, you haven't earned the right to look like that yet. That was kind of the, like if you're an RD in that facility, you've been there for 10 years, and you want to have pink strands in your hair for breast cancer awareness, that's fine for them. It is not okay for you as an intern.
Yeah, because you're at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah,
you have to play by the rules.
Yeah.
It kind of stinks, but
it does.
You'll be better off for it in the end. Through that process, you can be observing how those policies are upheld, in these different facilities that you're in. You can engage in these types of conversations with the dietitians that you're working with. If you happen to come in contact with individuals from other departments in an interdisciplinary manner, seeing what they're doing as far as covering them up, because you might walk into a different ward of the hospital and there might be a little bit different vibe about how they like to kind of present themselves. Or if you do get access to administration in some way, having that conversation of how do you feel about visible body art? Have you been changing policies? What do you see for the future with regard to that? So bottom line,
plus that gives you time to think about your tattoo as well, so you don't make dumb decisions.
So we will actually switch to that. So I'm saying bottom line, put your career first. So you did bring up a good point. Give us your expert tips and your what did we call it the other day? It's like your dream bullet point list of what clients that come in, when clients come in to see you, what are some tips you can give folks to be a great client?
To be a great client, the number one thing in my opinion is patience. That is the number one thing, is patience. Because we live in this time of where everything's instant gratification. I gotta have it right here, right now. If I can't get it right now, I'm never gonna get it. That's number one. Number one is patience. So have patience. Understand that if you're going into a place that is very popular, like our shop, I'm not gonna say we're the best in the world, because we're not. That's just selfish. But if you're gonna go into a highly reputable shop, understand that you're going to have to wait. Hands down, you're going to have to wait. So just number one, be patient. As far as that goes, communication is up there, because I get it all the time to where people come in and they want something or they want to do something, but they're afraid to talk to me about it because they think they're going to hurt my feelings because they're telling me how they want their tattoo, when I don't care. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I don't have to wear the tattoo, and I can't read your mind, so I need you to talk to me. So open communication is very important. So yeah, I have, and then two, the day you get here to review your tattoo, like we show everything before we put it on skin. So if there's something about the drawing you don't like, speak up. Like, again, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Every tattooer I know would rather give you the best tattoo that they can give you that you want. So if it's not up to what you want, let's talk it out, see what you want to change. Don't be afraid. Like, we're just people. Like, that's it. We're not here because, like, I'm going to do a tattoo that I would want to wear, like the quality of. So don't worry about that part of it. Worry about getting the tattoo that you want. But yeah, patience, communication. That's it. And then the day of, be prepared for pain. Like,
it hurts.
It hurts. There's a lot of people lately that have come in, and I'm doing big pieces on them, like big back pieces and stuff. And they have it in their head that, oh man, this is going to be easy. I'm going to knock out, 5-6 hours today and everything like that. And they get in here and an hour into it, they're tapping out. They're just like, I'm done. I can't handle this. Tattoos hurt. So be prepared for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty laid back when it comes to, talking with clients and everything like that. I don't sugarcoat anything, because when you start to try to baby people and, tell them what they want to hear, then you're not going to get the best tattoo out of it. And chances are they're not going to get the tattoo that they want. Because you'll talk to some artists in like street shops again and stuff like that. You talk to them, they're like, oh, okay, it's got to be this way or I'm not going to do it. Which, that's not the best mentality to have. You want to do what's best for the client, because you could walk out of here and I never see that tattoo again or see you again. You have to live with that decision for the rest of your life. So let's do it right the first time, because I've been doing a lot of cover-ups. Again, the internship, take your time, think about your tattoo, because I've been doing a lot of cover-ups lately. But yeah, I mean, I'm really not too strict when it comes to the perfect client. The number one thing I would say is patience.
Patience.
Just be patient.
Which is something that anybody watching this podcast should be fully prepared for, since it's already a long journey to get through an internship and to become a dietitian.
Be patient
now.
with your internship.
Be patient with the whole process. And if something like this has to wait until after you're done and after you're out into your career in a position where you're comfortable with having more visible tattoos, or you have more of an income stream to afford the type of things that you want, then it's just going to have to wait.
Yeah, that gives you plenty of time to save up and get the tattoo that you want at the quality that you want.
Yeah.
So you don't have to settle for getting, a little tattoo that you're not going to like in 2 years.
Exactly.
So save up, do whatever you need to do. Put your internship first. Because I tell people all the time, we're a luxury item. We're a luxury service. There's not anything out there that says you have to have a tattoo or that we have to tattoo you. We're not a basic necessity. Yeah, it's like we're a luxury item. So
yeah.
I fully understand that. Other people need to understand that. So yeah,
to wrap up this episode, of course, your body should not be your resume. But we have discussed throughout this whole episode that at times you might just have to play by the rules of your internship or your workplace. And what you really want to do is do your research, find those programs with those rules and regulations that resonate with you. If a program has a rule that you are not comfortable with, that's a pretty good sign that that might not be the type of program that you want to apply to. And that even continues into the future when you are looking for jobs after your internship when you're an RD. If there are company policies that don't resonate with you, those are really big red flags that you should look somewhere else. And so I always like to remind my students, trust your gut. You're going to be going towards those programs that are going to want you for you, and trust that they would probably work with you more to figure out how you can cover up something.
yes.
And maybe you'll just have to live with long sleeves under your scrubs for a couple of months, depending on what certain facilities you're at. And if you're comfortable with that, then go ahead and do it. If you're not, then wait. Wait until after you're done. Wait until you're in your career, and then start exploring.
It's usually cold in hospitals anyway.
It is usually cold, so you'd probably be wearing a white coat anyway. So we do wear white coats in some of our programs, so you might have long sleeves on anyway, so this might not be an issue. This whole episode doesn't mean anything to you now, but that's okay. So the more informed you are, as always, the more informed you are before applying to programs, even before you even venture into the application process, going to open houses, and then the later stages of applications with interviewing and whatnot, the more informed you are about everything, the better off you will be. So Bryan, do you have any final thoughts about what we've kind of discussed today? Is there anything we didn't mention?
I think we pretty much covered all the major topics. Like you said, if the company's policies don't agree with the way you want to live your life or what kind of job you're looking at getting done, and that's with anything. It's a huge red flag. So it's like kind of re-examine, where you want to go with it. But yeah, definitely, I am the first person to tell you not to get a tattoo, because you don't want to compromise the rest of your life for a tattoo.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
It's just a tattoo.
Yeah, it's just a tattoo. You got plenty of time to get tattooed. But yeah, figure out what you want to do. Figure out where you want to be in life. And then once you get to that point in life, then get a tattoo.
Because it's going to work out.
Yeah, it'll all work out. It's again the same way with my apprenticeship. Like I thought I wanted to quit every day for like a year. Like I did. Like I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. I'm not good at it. Like there was all kind of self-doubt. And yeah, every day for literally a year, I wanted to quit. Like I just was fed up. I wasn't happy with the way it was going, where the direction was going, everything. Mainly that was because I was working a second job and I couldn't put my full attention onto the job I wanted. So the more you can concentrate on where you want to be, the faster you'll get there. Cut out all this other stuff and everything. Don't worry about getting a tattoo right now if it's something that number one, you're probably going to hate it in 2 years again anyway, like if you're just settling for a tattoo, because you're going to change your mind 1,000 times. Because I'm glad I didn't get some of the stuff I wanted when I was 18 tattooed now, because I would look like crap.
Do you still like your first tattoo?
My first tattoo is covered up.
I don't like my first tattoo either.
My first tattoo, and pretty much the majority of all the cover-ups that I do nowadays, are first tattoos. So yeah, majority of the time, you're gonna hate what you have as your first tattoo anyway. So, focus on your career, focus on where you want to be in life, cut out all the other distractions and everything like that, because when you do that and focus on what you have to do, like I said, bite the bullet. Like, that's my number one thing, is just bite the bullet, do what you got to do to get there, and then celebrate. Once you get that job, you're just like, I'm finally where I want to be. Then go get a tattoo, celebrate with a tattoo, like go out and get what you want that you've probably spent the past 2 years thinking about anyway. And chances are at this point you have the money to get what you want.
Exactly.
That's the number one thing too. Don't cheap out on your tattoos, because you're never going to get what you want. But yeah, just that. Focus.
All right, well, that wraps up another episode of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. Don't forget to like this episode and subscribe so you never miss maybe another episode like this of an alternative topic that will take us.
We could do more.
If you want to see Bryan again, drop in the comments. Drop your ideas in the comments on what kind of episodes
Nobody wants
you
to
would
see
like
me again.
Mr. McKinley to comment on.
I'm boring. I tried to rein it in a little bit.
Well, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.